Series 3, Episode 3. This episode is a continuation of my conversation with Richard Capener from Episode 1 of this series. In this episode, we are joined by Clara, and we have a conversation about horror movies. I begin by asking Richard why he thinks people are drawn to horror.
I can only talk about, why I like them. And I love cinema, so that there was definitely that. And this was back in the days when video rental stores were still a thing. VHSs were still a thing. So when I was just kind of exploring the local video rental store, there was a horror movie section, and I kind of eventually made my way into that. I think my first one was the original Wicker Man, and I was already into the avant-garde then. And obviously, the Wicker Man is the best of both worlds. It's a horror movie, and it's got all these strange formal ideas running through it. Because this was around the time Asian cinema was really, really having an impact on the West, like a Ringu and like Dark Waters and like The Grudge, or the original language ones. So that was my first sort of introduction to it. And then I think I was saying earlier that Gloucester's at the time it was a big metal and punk town, and that wasn't how I expressed my coming to terms with the world as a teenager, which I think is what those genres thankfully give so many people. My big sort of fuck you to the world was getting into the avant-garde. Like, that was my punk rock, but also horror movies. That was my stance against accepted culture, because I think people need to remember as well, like, it's only very recently horror movies have become a lot more accepted and gotten like 5-star reviews in broadsheet newspapers.
Elevated horror, they're calling
elevated horror, yeah.
Which kind of is a bit patronizing to all the horror that's come before, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, whenever anybody says elevated horror, I'm thinking, here is all of the films David Cronenberg has made. Go watch them.
Well, David Lynch.
Well, David Lynch, yeah, but or Romero or Craven, but so it was very much that. Like, I just kind of, in the same way you get people who passionately invest themselves into punk culture or metal culture, I became alongside the avant-garde. I also became very, very passionately invested in horror movies, and that continued into adulthood. To be honest, very much for the same reasons we were discussing just now. And like, many horror movies are problematic texts to navigate through. On one hand, they can be extremely radical and extremely anarchic. On another hand, they can be profoundly conservative and profoundly regressive. And horror provides a really, really useful platform to try and think through those issues for me, at least. So that's certainly for me. How about you two?
Yeah, I should mention Clara's here.
Hi everyone.
I first got into horror because of my cousin was babysitting me. My cousin, who's much older than me and should have known better than to show me Evil Dead 2 when I was 8 years old.
That's a hard movie to watch when you're 8 as well.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you look at it now; it's so camp. It's obviously camp. As an 8-year-old, I didn't see any of the campness. I just saw the horrificness, and it terrified me. The cliched answer to why do people like horror is because you're seeing something scary, but you know you're safe. I don't think it's that. I think it's a bit like, on the last episode of the podcast, we were eating chilies that got increasingly hot. I don't know if you listened to this. It's worth a listen. And there's something addictive about eating spicier and spicier food. It's like you're daring yourself. And I think it's like that with horror movies. I want to recapture the horror I felt as an 8-year-old watching Evil Dead 2 and Nightmare on Elm Street I saw when I was really young as well. I want to keep pushing myself to see if I can get that scared again. So it's kind of an addiction.
I think my horror origin story is similar to yours, isn't it? My brother's 10 and 12 years older than me, and growing up they were full on into the video nasty era, things like that. But my parents were also of the opinion I should watch horror films in the term now I suppose would be safe space, but with my family around me and things like that. So I grew up, one of my favorite films as a kid, aged 7 or 8, was The Lost Boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up watching these, but it was always weird because there were some boundaries my parents would set. And I remember my brother having on the top shelf in his bedroom The Evil Dead 2. And it had this cartoonish comic book cover, and I really wanted to watch it. And for some reason, that was forbidden by my parents. I remember, and I was still scared. And my brothers would show me films that would scare me, usually when my parents weren't home. But then I remember going out with my friend, probably when I was, again, about 10 or 11-year-olds, to car boot sales, which I suppose for anyone in the US, you might call yard sales or something like that, where people are just trying to get rid of their junk. And the people running the video stores would sell you anything. And I remember, again, quite early on, me and my friend pooling our pocket money and getting The Fly, the David Cronenberg Fly, and other horror movies, anything we could get our hands on, and we would watch them. And again, the
Cronenberg Fly, but that was another one that was, I remember being horrified by, especially I think I can put spoilers. It's old enough that I can reveal spoilers. The bit where he melts the guy's leg.
I was just where he vomiting on the guy's hand and melting it. And the other one was like with my brother was RoboCop. But it was just always being challenged. And then as I've got older, I just really started to love the artistry of like the practical effects and things like that, and seeing things like Tom Savini's work and the other masters, of just seeing what they could come up with. It just fascinated and horrified me, and I loved that. But probably started too young, but got hooked.
Yeah, I was quite a sensitive kid, so I was the kid who was always hiding behind the sofa with when the horror movie was advertised. But I don't know what changed in me, but I think it was maybe because I built it up in my head that horror movies were somehow so deeply transgressive that that's why it became a punk rock for me, because I was overcoming that boundary, you know.
Well, I think that might be a thing anyway, that it's the kids who, when they're young, are very afraid of them, end up liking them, because it's almost as though you've got to prove that you've got over it. You've got over that fear.
That's a lovely way to put it. Yeah, I didn't think of it like that. That's like it's a way to prove it to yourself. But I was going to say as well, because you brought up The Fly, and we were just talking about whether or not an artist's intentions can be interpreted by an audience. The big thing with The Fly was that when it was released, all the critics thought it was about AIDS. And Cronenberg said over and over and over again, I did not make this film about the AIDS epidemic. But it's become like the AIDS film, you know. Like it's super interesting to think about. And I mean, and just to tie it back into that, like of course it's about AIDS. Like Cronenberg is a body horror director, and he made the movie in the 80s. So like it's going, and he's a very, very sexual director as well. Like, I think with Cronenberg in particular, like he started off wanting to do softcore anyway. So like the libidinal and the sexual has always been in his movies. So even if he and I love Cronenberg, he's one of the most important directors to me. But I think even if David denies it, it's in his movies whether he likes it or not. You know?
Well, let's not get back into that argument. I'll have to think about that one. Still think if it's the intention. If the artist says it's not about something, I'm going with what the artist says. I think just about.
Sure.
I don't know.
You can discuss that another episode, maybe.
Well, it's not something I'm completely committed to. It's a really difficult argument. We talked about David Lynch a moment ago, about how to interpret that. I was going to say one of my favorite memes that you get of David Lynch is you must have seen this. It's an interview he did where someone says, talk about Eraserhead, and he says, well, this Eraserhead is probably the most personal movie I've ever made. And the interviewer says, would you like to elaborate? And Lynch just says, no.
I think I think he says it's the most spiritual movie ever made.
Spiritual, that's it, yeah. Yeah.
And the interviewer says, "Can you explain that?" And he's like, "No." Yeah. It's interesting because I think the point that was raised earlier, Clara, was like whenever any of his characters try to explore the mystery, that's when the horror happens. And so it's like it's best left unexplored. Although I'm really defensive about Inland Empire, which is a movie that gets a lot of shit, but I
love that film.
Love that film to bits. And I think it's a late period masterpiece. I think it's absolutely great. But I think that, and people say it's like it's one of his most inaccessible films, but I don't think it is, because at the start you have the Laura Dern's character tempted to have an affair, and the trigger that causes the entire horror movie is and this is in the beginning of the film. It's she has this affair with her colleague, and that's the thing that somehow causes all of this to happen. And so in many ways, I think it's probably Lynch's accessible film, because he gives you at least that to hold on to and try and use that as an interpretive strategy, which is more than you get in Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive. But yeah, that's my Inland Empire defense.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Lynch?
So I think, well, this is the problem with a director who's had a career, like it tends to get divvied up. But I think in terms of earlier Lynch, Blue Velvet is probably the one I would always hold on to, even over Raise Your Head, even over Blue Velvet. I don't actually like Wild at Heart. I struggled to get on with that one. I adore Nicolas Cage and I adore Laura Dern, but Wild at Heart is a movie where it doesn't quite work for me as well as his others. But Blue Velvet, in terms of the earlier films, in terms of the later films, it would be a tie between Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire. But to be honest, I see Inland Empire as it's set in the same world as Mulholland Drive, in a way that Erase Your Head and Blue Velvet I don't think is. Like I kind of see it as his LA trilogy. Like it goes Lost Highway, Mulholland, and Inland Empire. So if I can pick two later films, Inland Empire and Mulholland Drive, definitely. But again, not to kind of undo everything I just said, but we also have to just note the first season of Twin Peaks
that is possibly the best thing he's ever done. Yeah. But it's coherent. It's the most coherent.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I initially thought I was going to butt against that, but now that I'm sitting with it more, I know it is his most coherent film. Not film. The most coherent. Yeah.
So it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people would say it's the best thing he's done, which is strange. As a director who's famous for being incoherent, his most loved thing is the most coherent. I mean, I really like Lost Highway. I know it's not most people's favorite, but I really like that film.
Yeah, I just got to say I do have a soft spot for Wild at Heart, but maybe because it's the first Lynch film I saw, so it could be a bit of that. Yeah, but I do have a soft spot for that film, and I didn't see Twin Peaks until a bit later. All the others came a bit later as well. So,
well, yeah, there were some amazing moments in Wild at Heart. I think Willem Dafoe's character is extraordinary. Like the cameo with what's his name? He was in Back to the Future. There's a cameo in Wild at Heart by a guy who was in Back to the Future, and like that whole sequence is really, really odd and strange. And
Crispin Glover.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And like even with Lost Highway, like it's strange because I like that movie. It's certainly not my favorite, but it's got one of my favorite Lynch moments in it, which is the pale man walks up to Bill Pullman's character and phones him. Also, I know Bill Pullman phones home, and then the pale character is in front of him, but he's also back at his place. Like that's extraordinary. That's on par with the gas mask scene in Blue Velvet, or a couple of moments I can pinpoint in Mulholland Drive. Like it's just this extraordinary moment of cinema, which is terrifying, and it plays with vampire motifs, but it also plays with ideas like anxieties around media and being watched. Like I think it's probably one of one of the finest surveillance horrors going. Lost Highway.
It's also of all his films, I think it's the one that's most like Twin Peaks. So it has that, resonates with that, but the same kind of era, I guess. I was a bit later, wasn't it?
So Lost Highway, I think, was 1996, and then I think Twin Peaks was earlier. Yeah,
it was earlier,
about 89, 90, wasn't it? So, well, near enough. Near enough.
It was early enough that my parents watched it, but wouldn't let me watch it.
I think another director who I think you might like him more than me, but I'm certainly very interested in grappling with his films is Rob Zombie.
Well, the thing about Rob Zombie is, I think I want to like him. I want to like his movies more than I like them. I think that's the conclusion I've come to. There's so much to like about them, but they are obviously flawed. We've talked about Rob Zombie before, and I said my favorite film of his is The Devil's Rejects, and you said it was your least favorite of his.
No, it's not my least favorite. 31 is my least favorite, but
oh yeah, well, fair enough. Yeah.
Okay, so the Firefly trilogy itself, which is for people who aren't creeps, it's House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Reject, and Three from Hell, based around a psychopathic, murderous, cult-like family called the Firefly family. So those movies, the reason I say they're difficult to grapple with is the thing that I can't ever quite work through with Mr. Zombie's films is the generous borderlining on joyful use of sexual violence, which permeates all of his, or the majority of his films. The reason why I'm still interested in approaching them and working through them is, on the surface, it looks like a class politic. It looks like these backward hit, like in American parlance. Obviously, I don't really like these terms, but the sort of backwards hillbilly types wreaking revenge on wider culture. But I think it's deeper than that. I think it's far more. I think it's far more confrontational than that, because I think what we see with those three films is Americana decayed, and there's a really, really key moment in The Devil's Rejects where I think it's Otis, that character has kidnapped somebody, and he's about to kill them, and the person who he's kidnapped says, "Oh, I'll pay you money," and Otis says, "I'm not interested in money," which is such a key statement for that that film, because it takes the character outside of any sense of class, and it takes the characters outside of any sense of capital, and all these characters are interested in. And again, like, there's these characters who come from this scrap heap of the carnivalesque, like in House of a Thousand Corpses. It's just like the like absolute dregs of American society just decayed around them. The way I see those three movies, and the way that I still like to engage with them, and sorry, the reason I still like to engage with them is precisely because I think they speak to what happens when we ignore the darker parts of culture. It just eats us alive. And in the context of a Rob Zombie movie, it doesn't just eat us alive; it then fucks us afterwards. And it does like all of these horrific, bestial, taboo things, which is valuable to think through, and that's something horror movies can give us. It can give us that sort of space to think through that. So I appreciate zombies movies for that reason. It kind of helps us or it helps me to think through this this decayed culture that in the context of the story might even be outside of class and capital. So that's my sort of take. But just for the record as well, my favourite Rob Zombie movie is Lord of Salem.
Well, we saw that again recently, and I preferred it on the second watching.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. I mean, anything with witches, it short circuits my brain. Witches, I just love them. But
in fact, yeah, I mean, I still think Devil's Rejects is the best. Although, admittedly, it is the most problematic in terms of what you're saying with the violence. But yeah, Lords of Salem might be second favorite.
It's right, and I did enjoy Lords of Salem more on the second watching, and Devil's Rejects is not an easy watch, but
yeah. Although I will say that, I mean, don't you think there's an evident Tarantino influence over Rob Zombie's films? That perhaps means maybe, and this might just be me again trying to resist any sort of socio-political interpretation, but maybe because of that Tarantino influence, maybe like Tarantino, these especially Devil's Rejects, maybe it's just a film aware that it's a film, and it's just playing on various tropes of that kind of exploitation 70s movie,
and caricaturing them to the fullest extent,
getting away with what you can do in the 20th century.
Sure, I'm really fascinated by the term caricature there, because I think one of the ways caricature works is very much like any textual language. It functions on a shared understanding, and a shared understanding implies a social context.
You got me again.
You know what I mean? Like, so I and this goes back to a point earlier, Clara, which I don't think you were here for. It's like, I don't like to say that all art is political, but I like to say that all art, it exists in the social realm. So it's and so again, I don't think we can quite escape from like, and caricatures are political, you know, like in the Nazis would caricature Jewish people in their propaganda.
Yeah.
And because there was an assumed understanding there, and there was an understanding that they wanted the audience to have an understanding of, you know. So again, I think the problem is, and I think this is maybe why you guys push against ideas of the political. It's because it's always assumed to be grandiose, and I don't think the social realm, as I would prefer to call it, is grandiose. I think it has the room to be far more quieter and far more humble than oh God, I don't know, like a Griffith movie, you know.
Okay, well, you know, I don't have a problem with the idea that all art is social. I'll accept that. Not going to say all art is political. You'll never find me saying that. But
no, you'll never find me saying that. But it's because I believe all art exists in the social realm. But I feel like I've dragged you back into my sordid world. So I'm going to take us back out and say that despite saying Lords of Salem is my favourite zombie movie, my second favourite is House of a Thousand Corpses. Like, I think that's such a glorious, odd film. It's got these insert shots where characters start to address the camera directly, and like it's got these long periods of silence, and alongside all of this like really trashy bad taste.
Well, it's his first film, isn't it? I mean, it's almost like you can't tell if these things are mistakes from someone who's learning how to do it, or if it's intentional, or a mixture of both. It's a very weird film. I don't like the ending. I think the way it just basically turns into a music video at the end shows that it doesn't seem like that was a stroke of inspiration. It feels more like he just didn't know what to do.
Yeah, but bless him, he finished that film over years because the funding kept drying up and all. But I think you're right. Like, I think it's probably both mistakes and inspiration. Like, and I think that works to his credit. Yeah, interesting to think about. So, what was the last horror movie that you two saw?
Lake Mungo. We saw.
Yes.
Did you actually?
A few days ago.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck me. So that was the second to last movie I saw.
Really?
Yeah.
It's about 10 years old as well.
2008, yeah.
So, more than 15 years old. Wow. Well, what do you think? What did you think of it?
I loved it. It was
the thing is, it's what genre is that in? It's not quite found footage. It's not quite mockumentary. I don't know if you have a mockumentary horror.
It's still a mockumentary. It's just not a comedic one, is it? You tend to think of mockumentaries as being something taking the piss out of the.
But then it uses found footage.
But it is, it's not just we found this video in the woods. It's it's a dramatic fake documentary, isn't it?
Yeah, we really liked it. I mean, it was what I liked about it is at no point do you know where it's going.
Yeah, it pulls the rug out from under your feet constantly. Yeah. So because I didn't know it was going to be a documentary film, like for the listener, it's a fictional documentary, but it's done in that format. And when it started, my heart slightly sank because I read the synopsis and I was like, oh, I'm definitely up for that. For that movie, and I thought it was going to be a narrative feature film as we come to understand it. And when I realised it was a documentary, I was like, I feel like I know where it's going to go. But the real strength of it is because it's a documentary. It frames all of the characters as if they've had time to process what's happened. And so the characters aren't necessarily talking to the camera in an emotional way. They're just talking very matter of fact. And what that does is, like, if characters told you how they felt about a situation in any normal feature film, it would seem really on the nose and it would seem really like that's too much exposition. But in the context of a documentary, it really works, and it really adds to the sort of strange tension of the film. And then in terms of me thinking I knew where the film was going to go, it really twists on you, in a really glorious way. And it's a very emotional film as well.
Yeah, and without giving away any spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it, we know it's an old film, but it's not very hugely well known. I mean, did you find, because I did, that it had some of those Lynchian Twin Peaks kind of vibes?
Oh yeah,
in terms of how it develops and.
Sorry, yeah, the family's called Palmer. I mean, like the surname of the main family in the film is called Palmer, so it's that. But also, I know what you're referring to, and I won't spoil it for the listener. But the things that happen in the film, there are some similar plot points to.
Yeah, it's
Australian Twin Peaks.
A little bit of plagiarism.
But in a really lovely way. Like I came away from it because the way I heard about it was on social media, and because I follow the director of Skinamarink, if you saw that film, and I saw him recommend it to somebody, and I loved Skinamarink. I thought it was great. So when he recommended it, I was like, I need to see Lake Mungo. I think if I have one thing to say about it, I don't want to say it's a criticism. It's really disconcerting. It's really eerie to watch. Depending on what gets under your skin, but like honestly, hard violence doesn't get under my skin. A camera in a dark room just recording an empty space gets under my skin.
Yeah, because that's it. It's not at all a gory film, is it? It very much plays on your mind. It's the shadows, it's the cameras, it's what you can't see and what you think you see, and everything else. It's not a gory film, if that's what people do or don't like. But it's scary.
What other films are there like that, apart from Skinamarink, which is just that?
Yeah. So let's talk Skinamarink actually. So you guys saw it?
Yeah. It's an interesting kind of horror, isn't it? Because it is just pure. Well, it's a reimagining of how you felt as a kid when you are left alone in the dark.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what it is. That's what the whole film is. It's like there's not much more to it. It's just it's trying to put you back into that state of being a terrified child in the dark.
It's alone in the house, and you see a noise and see a shadow,
and
your parents aren't home.
Well, the parents have abandoned, not abandoned, but the parents just are absent completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next thing that I was going to say would drag us back into interpreting art as social realm, so I won't say that.
Oh, go on. I don't mind.
So I'm going to mess their name up. So I'm just going to quickly remind myself their surname is Jane Schoenbrunn, who directed We're All Going to the World's Fair. Did you get a chance to see that one?
No,
not yet.
Oh dear God! Well, I can talk about that film at length, but when they saw Skinamarink, they put a thing out on social media saying that it reminded them of growing up queer in a household that may not have necessarily accepted them. And the key thing with this is Kyle Edward Bohr, who directed Skinamarink, is also a gay man. So there's been all of these LGBTQ interpretations of Skinamarink as children growing up in a household that keeps kind of shifting on them and changing, and the parents aren't there, but there's this strange outside force that's coming in, and they've kind of seen that and justifiably seen that in my view as speaking to the queer experience.
Yeah. Well, see, like I was saying before, this is a bit like Night of the Living Dead. If people want to interpret it that way, and it makes their connection with the film stronger and makes them appreciate it more, that's great. Not how I interpreted it, but that's fine. It's
true.
Yeah,
sure. But you need to see We're All Going to the World's Fair, because it's so sad. It's so sad, and just heartbreaking. I've always been somebody who can watch films over and over and over and over again. Like I can just how my brain works. But there's a couple of films, and one of them is We're All Going to the World's Fair, which is just it hits me so emotionally hard that it's like I've seen it once. Like the main character is like one of my all-time favorite movie performances. And I'm never going to watch it again. That's it.
Okay, we'll have to watch that.
Yeah.
What are the recent ones are there? Last time we saw you, when we had lots of drinks together in Birmingham and a good curry. That was a lovely day, by the way. Thank you. You had seen Terrifier 2, and we hadn't. We have now seen Terrifier 2. So we're going away from something like Skinamarink to something where I don't think we need to worry about what this film's about, do we? Terrifier 2. Well, no, maybe
I've got my takes on it,
I'll say one thing about it. I mean, I liked it, but I have one huge criticism, which is that a slasher movie about a killer clown should not be 2.5 fucking hours long.
Agreed.
So I've got a more controversial take on the Terrifier movies. They're not slasher.
Well, it should be 3.5 hours long.
Yeah. Well, in fairness to Damien Leone, he has said that Terrifier 3 won't be that long. He said that it was too. He admitted that Terrifier 2 was too long. Or he didn't say that. Sorry, but he said that if he was to do it again, that it wouldn't be 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's crazy for a film of that nature, because there's a point where all the gore, which is initially shocking, there's a point where you just get used to it, and it doesn't work.
It's I see Terrifier 2 in particular, not so much Terrifier, is like a revival of Lucio Fulci, the Italian giallo director who did
Yeah, well, we're big Fulci fans.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, there's one thing. I can't remember who said this, but someone made a point about Fulci, which was it was just thrown away in a review of one of his films, but it sums it up perfectly. It said, so here's another Fulci film with his trademark mix of flair and neglect. That just sums him up perfectly. He's like, you watch a Fulci film and you end up thinking, was that terrible or brilliant? And of course the answer is both.
Sure. Well, what do you think of Terrifier 2, Clara?
I'm struggling to remember the detail, but it did go on far too long. I kind of ended up drifting a bit, and then you lose connection to the overall plot.
Did you prefer the first one or the second? I'm saying first one's better.
Yeah, they're different, aren't they? That the second one went on too long. I didn't dislike it, but I think the general shock and queasiness of the first one was better overall.
It was a tight 90 minutes, wasn't it? Or maybe even been shorter than that. But yeah, so in the same way, I think maybe you guys like Rob Zombie more than me, although I really enjoy grappling with his movies. I think I might like Terrifier films far more than you guys do.
Would you prefer the first or the second?
Okay, so honest answer, the second, but I feel that the first film is just a really long prologue to the second film. Like it's just like it's an entire film.
So it's 1 4-hour movie.
Honestly, yeah, that's kind of how I think of it. But I like the second one. So I'll lay my colours on the mast, and everybody on Twitter can take the piss out of me. But my take on Terrifier 2 is the main character has a sort of a prophetic dream involving it's the classic clown cafe moment, or I say classic, like it's become a classic already, where, she sees various horrors taking place. And then later on in the film, I think it's the moment in the film that people vomited and walked out of the cinema, which is the bedroom scene. At the very, very start of that scene, it opens on those affirmation pictures that people have in their homes. And it says, be yourself, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
This character has one that says dream. It just says dream. And that scene, which is, the horrific one, it opens with the camera close up on the word dream. So we have a film that started with a dream, and then the most key, horrific, violent moment in the film opens up on the word dream. And then at the end of the film, there's kind of like a dream sequence. So it's difficult not to think of the film in psychoanalytic terms, if I'm being annoying. And then, we also need to consider the deeply sexual coding of the films as well. And yeah, we could probably compare them to Rob Zombie's films in that they're these movies in which desire has no filter. It's just absolute raw carnage. So my by no means problematic take, but my potentially annoying take for most people would be that the second film in particular can be framed psychoanalytically.
Always with the interpretations. No, that's good. I mean, yeah. Okay.
But I don't think it's an interpretation. Like, I think it's there in the film. Like, it opens with dream. Then the most violent scene in the film opens on a close-up of the word dream. And then there's a dream sequence towards the end of the film. Like, these aren't interpretative strategies. I'm not taking Marxism and being like, Terrifier 2, Marxist framework, let's go. Like, it's actually there in the film,
Yeah.
And Leone, bless him, is terrible at talking about his films. Like, he's like, yeah, I think The Clown is about the stuff that can happen to us that we don't predict. What? that tells us exactly nothing. But thank you. But like, I don't mean to take the piss out of him, but it's because I really really enjoy his films. But yeah, again, like I think like anyone, like all of us, he's possessed by the signifiers of his culture.
So what about what about the classics then? Do you have a favorite horror movie of the big ones that everyone's heard of?
I'm just looking at the because I'm sad enough to keep buying DVDs. In terms of the classics, I think maybe Halloween needs to be there. But I'll tell you what, no, this is my answer now that I said Halloween. The Exorcist, because we're just about to have a revamp of that, aren't we?
Yeah, won't be as good. Because they never are. Well, that's a good call, Exorcist. Have you got a favourite? No.
Put me on the spot.
I'll put myself on the spot. I can't think of anything. I mean, I've got a fondness for the ones I watched as a kid. So Nightmare on Elm Street, the Evil Dead films. Actually, Richard, you mentioned The Wicker Man earlier. I mean, hard to think of a better horror movie than that, really, all things considered. The original.
Yeah, I mean, I love Nick Cage, but maybe he shouldn't have done the remake of The Wicker Man. But
the misogynistic B metaphor movie.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, not to get away from the classics, but have you seen Mandy?
Yeah. Oh,
I love that film. I adore that film. But yeah, so your classic would be The Wicker Man, Anthony.
I guess so. I don't know. I feel like I should go for a gorier one. So, if not The Wicker Man, then Evil Dead 2.
Evil Dead 2 is a good choice. I had one and now I've lost it again. No, as a kid I always liked Lost Boys, but that's not really up there as a king of the genre. But I always like that as a guilty pleasure film.
Mm-hmm. You see, I was always a little bit too young for Lost Boys. Like, it didn't. The people I've met who adore that film, it's because they watched it at the right age. Whereas I tried to watch it like as a film buff, like just going back through all the old classics, and I couldn't get on with it at all. Like, it makes me feel terrible because I know it's such a special movie to so many people. But,
yeah, you've got to be sort of early teens, I think, to really like it. I would say. How old were you?
Like 8.
All right. Well, early teens or younger.
You can watch when you're 8. Like, I think it would probably be rated like a 12 now. Like, it's not a hard movie. Like,
there's a few bits. Like, there's definitely a scene where a guy gets his scalp ripped off, but who's not a vampire, because apparently you can do any violence to someone who's not human in films and you get away with it.
Just last night we watched the new Guardians of the Galaxy film, and that's rated PG, and there are some horrific things in that. It's definitely different these days.
Yeah. If it happens to a baddie or a non-human, you can get away with quite a lot more, as long as there's not actual gushing blood.
When I saw Skinamarink in Birmingham at the Mockingbird Cinema, it was rated 18.
Really?
Which is ridiculous. Like, I don't know why it was. I think it was because they were one of the few cinemas in England to get a copy of it to show on the screen. Then, having bought the DVD, it's rated 15 now. So,
yeah, but if you've got Marvel money, you can make a film where someone's face gets ripped off, and it's fine, PG.
That happens in Beetlejuice, and I think Beetlejuice is a PG.
But it's very comedic, isn't it? In Beetlejuice,
yeah,
it's very comic book. Like, I know the bit you mean, but it's very sort of silly, ripping my face off for effect.
And also, she's already dead. And she knows she's already dead. So I wonder if the censors saw that and was like, "There's context, like, it's fine."
Yeah, I know one. It's more modern, but I think that deserves to be recognised as a classic, and it's Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
We're back to Tarantino again. Yeah.
Well, Rodriguez.
Tarantino wrote it.
Was it co-written or was it just written by? I think
just Tarantino wrote it and Rodriguez directed. I think that's it.
I think it is as well. I'm just. So apparently it was co-written. It was co-written by Tarantino. In fairness, I thought it was just Tarantino. Yeah, Dusk Till Dawn is interesting. I think the thing that everybody says about Dusk Till Dawn is it starts off like a road movie, like just like any old dramatic movie, and then halfway through it just takes a sudden left turn into a vampire orgy.
Well, that's it. I was lucky enough to the first time I saw it. I was lucky enough to not know anything about the film, so it really worked for me.
Likewise, it
was a shock.
It was funny because this was one of those, again, back in the day we had video stores, and my brother rented it on a Saturday night and convinced the whole family to sit around with my mum and dad and everyone else to sit around on a Saturday night and watch it. Because it was a movie with George Clooney in, it convinced my mum. She was not impressed, but she sat through the film. But yeah, it was just complete curve. It had just come out. I don't think it had a very wide cinema release in the UK, so it had just come out on video, and we sat around and watched it, and it was just awesome. And again, linking back, I think again it was probably another one of those films that had a big impact on Mr. Zombie. Certainly the first half where you've got creepy Quentin Tarantino and
sure, yeah.
That's all.
I wonder as well if that came from the sort of generic B movie.
Well, again, yeah.
But I think. But Tarantino actually cast Sid Haig in Kill Bill as a cameo. In Kill Bill 2, when Michael Madsen, he's working at the strip club, walks in. Sid Haig is the barman. And that, and
I didn't know
that. Clown in Rob Zombie movies.
Yeah. I have to watch Kill Bill again.
It's kind of ringing a bell, but yeah, I need to see it.
And also, Tarantino got Rob Zombie to direct a feature film. Not, beg your pardon, a trailer.
Yeah,
a
trailer in Grindhouse.
Oh, that's really good. All of those are good. The Edgar Wright one is the best.
I want to see all of them be as movies. Like low key, I love Machete. I think it's not ironically. I think it's a really great film. So I'm glad that got made into a feature. But I want to see all of them.
Yeah,
I want to see all of them get made into a feature. Like I only recently, again, people might not know, but Rob Zombie, the fake trailer that Rob Zombie made for the film was like a B-movie Nazi exploitation films, which were popular in the 70s.
Werewolf Women of the SS.
Yeah,
Werewolf Women of the SS. Like I think when I first encountered B-movies, I was like Nazi exploitation films. Like, what the fuck? I don't want to see that. But then I saw a movie called Shockwaves, which has the pedigree of one Peter Cushing. Post Star Wars, but I think he did Star Wars: A New Hope, and then he went straight into Shockwaves, which is this Nazi zombie film. And when it's great, like watch it, like it's really really fun. But when I was looking at some of the material around it, and there was a podcast that I listened to on it, I really really got why Nazi exploitation films exist, and it's like this anxiety around like the Nazis didn't just vanish when World War II ended. They actually they did go somewhere. And a lot of
in Antarctica, or they're on the moon,
Well, that's what these movies were working through. Like it's the horror and the absurdity of that post-war moment. But also it would have, and this is something Suspiria chimes into really, really well, and the remake of Suspiria blows out of all proportion. It's the Baader Meinhof moment, and this idea that like there are still Nazis in German government. Like, what the fuck are we doing? It's very, very interesting to. But again, this is why I like horror movies. It gives us these problematic things to think through. You know.
Again, last time we spoke, we talked about Argento, and so we did watch Suspiria again. And I still don't get. I still just can't.
Did you watch the remake or did you watch the original?
The original. We watched the original again. I don't know what it is. He feels like a director I should like, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't buy into the suspense. I think that's the thing. It doesn't work on me for some reason. It's like a hypnotist, that some hypnotists could hypnotize me, some can't, and for some reason he can't. And I don't know what it is. There's something there. It's strange because he should, but I can tell he makes good films. By all rights, I should like his films, but I never really liked an Argento film.
Well, fair play. Suspiria was a holy text for me, practically. Like
it is for a lot of horror fans.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think for me, it's like anything to do with witches. I'm there. Like, I just love witches, but I also love just how sexual the movie is. Like, so profoundly horny. Like, it's so great to watch it, and also just how colourful it is. Like this incredible kaleidoscopic lighting, and these.
I should like colourful, horny witches.
well, indeed,
that's exactly what I like.
But I think, but what you said was you don't connect to the suspense of it.
Yeah, I think
it's to colourful, horny witches, you know. So, and the violence works for me as well. Like, I love how kind of absurd and strange it all is, but also the background, all the politics that are in the background is very, very quiet and very, very turned down. Like, you never really notice them. And I think one of my many problems with the remake was it took all of that and it just amped it up to 1,000, you know.
Yeah, well, we haven't seen the remake.
No.
It's I very almost didn't watch it, and the only reason I watched it was because Tilda is in it, and I, see as a patron saint of cinema. Of course, I love Tilda Swinton. Tom York did the soundtrack. And also the director did a movie called I Am Love, which is like it's like a resurrection of the like classic European melodrama. And I love the old European melodramas. Like, I'm completely enamored by them. So because I loved I Am Love so much, and if you're a horror fan, like, it's not going to work for you unless you like European melodramas, right? So it's not necessarily like you need to go and watch it. But because I loved I Am Love so much, I was like, I might as well give this new Suspiria a try. And ultimately, it's shit. But there are some great moments in it, which I shouldn't spoil for you. But on the whole, it's a really uneven pro-American intervention movie, if you want to watch it that way, which doesn't help it at all.
Okay, well, so I just thought of this, so it might be a bad idea, but I thought a good way to finish might be to go through this list I've just Googled, Empire Magazine's 50 best horror movies.
So this runs the risk of not having seen them, doesn't it? But unless
we can say.
Well, we'll say simply, like it, hate it, or haven't seen it.
This is the 50 best, yeah?
The 50 best. So
yeah.
This, according to Empire Magazine, I mean,
I've got it here, yeah.
It's there. It's just like their opinion.
Is that number one? Okay, I was going to in place 50, they gave the remakes of It, and I was like, did they give that number 1? But no, it is number 50. That's bottom of the list.
Just Image 1 of 50.
Yeah, they were good. They were good, weren't they?
Yeah, I thought so.
I thought the second one was unfairly criticised. Actually, I don't think it was a bad film at all.
I like the first one a lot more than the second, if I'm honest. I felt the first one, it played with its ideas a lot more. Like, I really like the idea of, like, I think there was a young Jewish kid in that film who has anxieties around his family and his father, and the form that Pennywise takes preys on those anxieties. And there's a young woman who is entering her womanhood, and the anxieties that Pennywise takes are around puberty. And I think like the first film did that really, really well. The second film threw all of that out of the window, and it was just like this really long, baggy movie that didn't work for me at all. But that's just me. If you liked it, then I will withhold any.
It's not as good. It's not as good as the first part, but I think it was. Yeah, that Bill Hader in, and he's pretty charming. So I'll give it that.
Sure. Well, I can see that next on the list is quite a prescient movie at the moment, considering it's a revamp has been announced, and that is the very, very first 2004 Saw movie.
Yep, that's a good film. I'm not really into torture porn stuff, but it has something for being one of the first, I think.
And the actual pulling the rug at the time.
Yeah, so I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that as 49.
Yeah, the first two Saw movies have a really close place to my heart. Like they like what I was saying about Lost Boys and me being too young for them. I was exactly the right age for when the Saw movies were released, and I like that the horror elements are short and punchy, in favour of plot and character. Whereas with the 3 onwards, the horror elements are long and boring, at the detriment of plot and character. So those first 2 Saw movies are a big yes from me.
Yeah, well, we've definitely seen the first 2. I think we might have seen one of the others.
Yeah, I can't remember. Next we go to
Hellraiser. No, this is one that, again, when I was young, I saw it when I was probably too young to watch.
Ditto.
And this was actually terrifying. When I was about 11 years old, this was terrifying.
No, I'm just trying to think whether I've actually seen Hellraiser or whether it was Hellraiser. I think it might have been I don't know whether I've actually ever seen Hellraiser. I think it might have been Hellraiser 2. But again, I was probably too young for it. But it's good. Yeah.
I love Hellraiser. I think it speaks to ideas around kink in a very interesting and quite radical way for its time. It speaks to the queer experience for so many of us, again, quite a time which it maybe wasn't so common to have seen that, and it's a movie that really, really holds up. I think I maybe watched it 2 years ago. It really, really works for me. Hellraiser.
Okay, so next we've got Audition, which we haven't seen.
It's on the list, isn't it? We have not seen Audition. Have you seen it?
Something we've been trying to get around to for a long time.
Yeah, I have seen it. It's it's one of those films which, a lot of the writing around it focuses on roles within Japanese culture, which obviously is going to be lost on me. But it's certainly a strange film. It has this long lead in. And it kind of feels like an odd, dry romantic comedy for the most part. And then in the very, very final moment, it goes into extreme cinema. So it's not a film I ever think about going back to, but it's a film that I'm glad. Again, it's like Rob Zombie. It's a film that I'm glad I grappled with.
Okay. The Devil Rides Out. I don't think we've seen this.
I don't think I've seen this.
Oh, it's wonderful. Have you not seen it? No. It's so good.
Oh, it's going on the list. There we go. It's going on the list I'm making as we're talking.
So it's notable for being one of the few films which Christopher Lee. It's one of the few films which he was a good guy in. Sorry, one of the few Hammer horror films he was a good guy in.
Gosh.
But also, it's wonderful and charming and colourful and just lovely. I love that film.
Okay, Kill List. We've seen this. This is a good film.
I'm trying to remember which one it is now.
Very unsettling ending. Yeah, I like this film. I
like it as well. Like any of those early Ben Wheatley films have got a very soft spot in my heart. I mean, A Field in England is one of my all-time favourite films, but Kill List is it begun the sort of folk horror revival. And I think it's a really terrific film to watch in terms of, it's a really great recession movie. If people watch it in terms of, and just think about the British recession, sort of circa 2008, they'll have a very interesting time, because it plays with folk horror tropes in a very, very clever way, I think. Great movie, though. I love that film.
Yeah, we haven't seen A Field in England.
No.
It's very, very much a me film. Like it's very, very it's the sort of film that would be my favourite film of all time. So I don't know if that's going to work for anybody else. But
okay, next we've got Cat People. That's a good classic.
I've never seen this. This is the one I haven't seen.
Okay, well, you should watch it. I don't think it will change your life, but
it's worth watching. You've seen it referenced in other things, won't you? It's one of those.
Okay, next we've got Day of the Dead. So we know all about Romero.
Yeah, we've already hammered that one out. What about you, Clara? Do you like Day of the Dead?
Oh yeah.
Not as good as Dawn of the Dead or Night of the Dead.
It's good fun. Good practical effects. That's it.
Drag Me to Hell is number 42. That's
okay.
I'm glad to see that, actually. Doesn't get enough attention. It's a very good film.
It's a modern classic. So my story about that film is I saw it in an empty cinema.
Oh, really? That must have been really quite eerie.
That is probably the best way to watch it.
Yeah, it was. It was a cinema in Gloucester, and I must have been a student at the time, because I was going to the cinema in the afternoon. But yeah, I watched it, and I was already an Evil Dead fan, so I was predisposed to Sam Raimi. But it's a modern classic, and I don't quite think it's been accepted as such yet. But I think it will be in the future.
God, I think I'd freak out if I was watching that alone in the cinema.
Well, this is the next film, Raw, which we have not seen.
Shamefully, I haven't either. I saw Titan, the director's following film, which I liked very much, but I haven't. It's one of those films that I just missed when it came out, and I haven't had a chance to see it. Although Titan is a wonderful, strange, sexy film.
Okay, and next we've got Dracula. Have to specify it's the Hammer, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the Hammer.
1958, so the very early Hammer Dracula. So, yeah, we've seen this.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it?
I'm afraid not. No, I know that's shameful, but I haven't.
And next is the Blair Witch Project, which I'm assuming we've all seen.
Yeah, I love it. Let's just love it.
I saw this in the cinema a few weeks prior to having to go hiking and camping. And then proceeded to torture some of my friends. But there you go. If you go hiking and you find a ram's skull, what are you going to do?
But the things everyone talks about with this is how well they marketed it. But one part of that is the fact that IMDb, into their movie database, had only just really emerged at this time, and they got all the actors uploaded onto that site and added biographies that said now missing. Well, went missing during the filming of this movie. But they went to such an extent to make people think this was real.
Yeah, well, it's a movie that it certainly wasn't the first found footage movie, but it's the first contemporary one that sparked that genre in for our generation, and I've got a very big soft spot for that movie. It's still just deeply creepy to me, and I think the fact that it is so daring, and I've got a lot of time for the Blair Witch Project.
And next is Hereditary. I love this film.
Me too. I'm glad you said that, because a lot of horror fans take against the whole A24 distributed films, but Hereditary is a movie that makes you feel emotionally winded at the end of it.
And I think Toni Collette is such a wonderful actor. Like, when she does horror roles, especially, she's so good. It's
the example I go to when I try to explain to people that the Oscars will never give Best Actor or Actress to someone in a horror movie. How on earth did they not?
Yeah, it's not only one of my favorite horror films of recent years. It's one of my favorite movies of recent years. I think it hits so well.
And I think the other thing with Hereditary, I think they did such a good job marketing it, because I think we saw the trailer for this, and it just, again, completely, we saw the trailer at the cinema and then wanted to go see it at the cinema, not really knowing anything about it, because the trailer just pulls the wool over your eyes completely.
The trailer makes you think it's going to be all about the little girl.
Spoiler, it isn't.
Yeah. But also, I mean, don't get me wrong, like from what you just explained, I completely understand why you'd have the experience, like that experience of the film. My experience of it when watching it was, in the first 10 minutes, it tells you everything that's going to happen. And what happens is that just plays out. Which sounds like it might be really, really boring, but it's the main horror of the film. Like you're told what's going to happen, and then you just see it all lock into place, and it's so upsetting. It's
like a sad Edgar Wright movie.
Yeah, exactly. But the next one is going to be interesting, actually, because it's a movie which I like, but I don't love as much as everybody else, and that is The Babadook.
Well, the thing I'll say about this is this. Earlier I said I like horror movies because I want to feel as scared as I did when I was a kid. This did that.
Okay.
It might not be the best film on this list, but it is really scary. It's
genuinely creepy
film.
Yeah.
So my thing with it is this: it's such a film about grief. To its credit, like, you could say that to any grieving person, and it would comfort them in a really positive way. And I really, really love the film for it. When I feel like when a movie is so much about what it's about, it takes a lot of the energy out of the film for me. And I think because of that, I didn't find it as scary as I wanted it to be. But the whole thing about the pop-up book is lovely. Like that whole sequence is so great. I wanted to see the monster more as well. I think it didn't show me enough the Babadook for me to invest in the monster, whereas like the classic "don't show the monster" text is Alien, and that really plays with the idea of not showing you it and showing you it. And I wanted the Babadook to do more of that, but it's a low budget movie, so I bless them for doing it. But it was never a movie I could fully invest myself in, but I like that it got the attention that it did.
Yeah, and so next, Bride of Frankenstein, which is my favourite of the Universal monster movies.
So I haven't seen the next two. I haven't seen Bride of Frankenstein or the next one.
I'll watch Bride of Frankenstein. It won't scare you.
It's a beautiful
Too much time has passed. It's not, those films aren't scary anymore, but it's an important film in the history of cinema. And Dracula. You haven't seen Dracula, the 31.
No, vampires are my favourite monsters, but besides witches. But I haven't seen all of these older films.
But again, watch both of those. Don't expect to be frightened by them, but watch them with interest, I would say.
Sure,
they're good. Poltergeist is next.
I love Tobe Hooper. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, classic. His other movies that aren't as well known, like The Funhouse, are great. For people who don't know, Tobe Hooper directed Poltergeist, but it was produced by Spielberg, and it just feels like a Spielberg movie to me.
It does, yeah.
It's the family unit, and when the poltergeist stuff happens, it happens to the family unit in the way that a Spielberg movie does, and it just doesn't hit me in the same way. Like I watched it when I was younger, and I was, oh yeah, Poltergeist, great. And then I rewatched it last year, and I was like, oh, this doesn't hit me in the same way at all. But that's not against Tobe Hooper. I think it's a problem with Spielberg more than Hooper. It's a popcorn horror movie, but the next movie is going to offend a lot of people that I don't like it, because I really don't like the next movie. But
Midsommar.
Midsommar, yeah.
I'll say we saw this at the cinema.
Mm-hmm.
I was disappointed because I wanted it to be as good as Hereditary, his previous film, and yeah, it really wasn't as good.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I really wanted to like him on it, but it's incredibly beautiful, and I like the sort of surrealist tricks with the background scenery and things like that go on through it. I think it's great looking out for that, and it does a good job of keeping you tense and anxious. But that seems to be it. I find that it didn't deliver, certainly in the last quarter.
Well, what about the end? What about the ending then? Like, Richard, what did you think of the ending?
The ending, well, the ending speaks to my problem with the whole movie, in that he repeats a lot of the same tropes that he did in Hereditary, but he just didn't do it as well. And in Hereditary, which I won't spoil, but in Hereditary, the ending is something extremely horrific that is presented to the audience like it is the best thing that has ever happened, ever. And it's like this sublime music, and it's the way it's shot, like it's coded, like it's going. Like, this is a great thing that's happening, but what you're seeing on screen is horror. And Midsommar does that, and it's at the ending, and it stretches it out for like 5 minutes, and it's again, like, that speaks to the entire. That speaks to the problem I have with the entire movie. It takes the same themes and the same technical ideas as Hereditary, and it just does it in a far weaker way. I love Florence Pugh. Like, I love the surrounding actors in the movie. But again, I just feel like it repeats the tropes of Hereditary in a way that weirdly it creates the same movie, Whereas
bright colored.
But even then, like, people tell me like it looks great, but I'm like, what? As good as Hereditary? Like,
no, I didn't say it looks right. I said it's Hereditary, but in bright
just
colors.
brighter.
Sure.
Sunny Hereditary.
But if you look at a director like Eggers, who did The Witch and The Lighthouse, like, he's a director who focused on one thing, but he ended up making quite different movies by doing that. Whereas I feel like Ari Aster with Midsommar and with Hereditary, he tried to do something different, but it ended up kind of being the same movie. But Hereditary is this like deeply horrifying, sublime film, whereas Midsommar isn't for me. I'm afraid, but that's just me.
Okay, next. Don't look now. Last when we met up in Birmingham, that was just before we went to Venice. We got into Venice that first night. Remember, it was late. It was raining. We were lucky in the next few days. It was sunny. We had a wonderful time. But the night we got in, it was rainy. But we just got to Venice. We wanted to have a look around. So we walked around. There was no one else around. It was just us walking down the street. Honestly, I kid you not, we turned a corner, and right in front of us was a little girl or a short woman.
It was a little girl. Her parents were just ahead of her eventually.
In the rain, wearing a red coat with the hood up.
Oh, wow.
And that's the first person we saw in Venice.
I think I turned to you and said, "We don't look now."
You turned to me and said, "Oh God," but you said it in such a way it was almost like, "Oh, we're going to get stabbed by a dwarf again."
Yeah. For people who haven't seen the film, maybe edit what you just set out. I don't know. You can do what you want. It's your podcast, but
it's old
enough.
Well,
it's 40 years old. I think people.
Yeah,
50 years old.
50 years old. Sorry, 50.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the. I don't mean to keep saying this, but again, like a lot of these movies are on my list. Like it's one of my all-time films. Like it's such a deeply strange film. But anything by Nick Roeg I love anyway. But I rewatched it 2 years ago, and after I used to watch it all the time when I had a rest from it. And there's a scene in it where it's early on, and it's when Don Sutherland's wife first meets the psychics, and the psychic tells her that her daughter's happy, and then she rushes off in tears to the toilet, and then the two women follow her, the psychic and her sister. And then in the toilet there's a fourth character who's just sitting there in silence, and the shot is framed like your eye is drawn to this fourth character, and it's just a woman who's there in the toilet, just sitting down, and whilst the scene is playing out, and the scene ends, and then you go outside, and it is never explained what's going on there. It's just this character you never see again, and there's so many little weird things like that. And also, like, a lot of people talk about the sex scene in the film, which is considered unusually explicit for its time. But what people don't talk about is how shots of the couple getting dressed are spliced into the scene. They're getting dressed after having had sex, and it's just like, what does that mean? What are you doing, Nicholas Roeg? But and I think, like, having rewatched it not long ago, it's it kind of speaks to ideas of like bending time and clairvoyance and things that might seem random, seem insignificant, but when you first encounter that movie, it's so strange.
Yeah.
Well, I remember it quite clearly because we watched it the night we got back from Venice. We watched this because that's how we wanted to remember Venice again. We were missing Venice, and because we're horror fans, let's just put Don't Look Now.
Well, as you should. Like, I haven't been to Venice, but one of the things I want to do is maybe rewatch Don't Look Now and do a little walking tour of it. Have you read Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino?
Oh yeah, yes. Yeah. So it's one of my favorite books, in fact. Yeah.
Oh God, it's mine too. It might actually be, like, gun to a head, my all-time favorite book. But this isn't a spoiler, but I think the thing about that book is it's just endless redescriptions of Venice.
Yeah.
And I think I might reread that book and then do a walking tour of like a Don't Look Now walking tour of Venice. But
yeah, well, we certainly can recommend Venice.
Yeah,
it's a singular place. Okay, next is Let the Right One In, which I think we've only seen the remake, haven't we?
Yeah, we've only seen the remake.
The remake is like watching somebody you deeply care about getting pissed on.
We did not like it very much.
I mean, that's the feeling we got, that we watched it. It maybe the remake kind of works in its own way, but we watched it thinking, "Oh, wish we watched the original instead." Yeah,
the original is wonderful, and it's weird and creepy. I haven't read the novel, but apparently the novel focuses far more on the aspects of preying on a child. Because the vampire in Let the Right One In is the form of a child, but they're 100 and so years old. But apparently, and she forms a relationship with a younger boy, and apparently the novel explores that far more. But I think the fact that the film hints at it but doesn't quite explore it is so much worse. Like, it's so much more creepier and strange. but also the ideas around social degradation and community and family degradation is very, very moving in the film.
Okay, well, that's another for the list. We've got the Innocents.
I haven't seen this one.
I don't know if we have.
I don't think we have.
Well, it's the adaptation of Turn of the Screw. I might have seen this.
I love the Turn of the Screw as a novel. I haven't seen the film.
Okay, well, let's move past it. Shaun of the Dead is 29.
Oh, that's a thumbs up.
So we're letting comedy horror into the list, apparently.
Sure.
Yeah, we like this.
I like it. Definitely like it. I mean, it's not a movie I go back to, but Spaced, which was the sitcom that Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright did, and with Nick Frost and oh God, I can't remember her name. Jessica.
Yeah.
Jessica Stevenson.
Beg your pardon. That's Spaced was like a seminal thing for me. So
yeah. Well, that's too. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So Shaun of the Dead is going to be special for me on that basis. Although out of all of the Edgar Wright films, it's not what I go back to. I think
Hot Fuzz is better. Hot Fuzz is good
film. Yeah. I mean, even like people that didn't like it when it first came out, but Scott Pilgrim versus the World is like this glorious, generous, colourful film, which I really, really enjoyed. But Shaun of the Dead, like solid first film, not one I go back to.
Okay, next is It Follows, which is again along with Babadook and a bunch of Robert Eggers films. This is elevated horror.
Yeah, well,
it still just seems like horror.
Yeah. Well, what did you guys think of it?
I don't like it as much as the other films it's been bracketed with as elevated horror, but it's good. I don't have a problem with it. We've seen it a couple of times, and I've enjoyed it.
Yeah,
but it's not a favorite.
I'm much the same. Like, I think I had a change of heart of it because my first viewing of it was a viewing that a lot of like movie journalists had at the time, which was, isn't this like a really conservative movie about sex? Like, it's about a curse that gets transmitted sexually, but like, isn't that a bit
up on you gradually?
Yeah, and I was like, I'm not sure if this is a useful movie to engage with, but I've only ever seen it once, actually, having said that. But I listened to a podcast, the wonderful Horror Vanguard podcast, which everybody needs to listen to. But their episode on It Follows changed my mind on that. By the same token, I still need to rewatch It Follows after it. Like, I haven't seen it since it was first released, but I'm willing to give it another go after having heard the Horror Vanguard episode on it.
Out next is Robert Eggers. So the next is The Witch. And I love this film.
Yeah.
It's on the bits. It's in that list of best contemporary films for me. It's one of the
me too. Yeah.
I think like most films about witches are really about gender politics, or they're about social politics in some way. The Witch is one of the few films which is actually about the witch as an archetype. And certainly the gender reading is in there, but it's also about just this deeply uncertain, ambivalent horror that waits for all of us. And I was saying earlier, like, I came from a religious family, so a lot of the anxieties that a religious family has are played out in this film. I love all of Eggers' movies, but The Witch for me is still the text.
I think The Lighthouse is his best film.
The Lighthouse is super interesting. Yeah.
But The Witch second, and The Northman third. But they're all really, really good. So being third is not bad in that list. Okay, Night of the Living Dead. Here we are. Talked about it earlier.
Yeah, I think we've already had a good go at it, but it's a classic, isn't it? And
it is.
And I do not have anything to add to that. What about you, Clara?
No, I'm not going to jump back. We've got a lot of films to get through. If you've already talked about it, I'm sure I don't have opinions too different to what you've already discussed.
But it's a thumbs up from everybody.
Oh yeah, it's a thumbs up.
The Descent. Well, The Descent is. I think this is a film that is going to age very well.
Yeah, it's a perfect horror film. Like honestly,
it was genuine. It had, for me, for the first time in a long time when we saw this, it was a film that was genuinely scary and creepy and atmospheric in a similar vein to, I think, like the way Alien and Aliens was, that claustrophobia and fear of the dark, isolation feeling.
Yeah, and all of the besides the shot where they first go into the cave, that was an actual cave, but all of the other bits and pieces are set pieces, which is just mind blowing. Like they had the same, effectively, they had the same set pieces that they just recombined.
Move those rocks over there, move those up a bit.
Honestly, yeah. And it's extraordinary to think about. Like it's great, but also the dramatic conceit of like this. I think the main character is grieving the death of her child, and then all of those anxieties play out in this underworld layer. It's terrific to watch. It still really, really holds up.
Well, just the concept too. I mean, this is why I say it's going to age well. It won't be forgotten, like so many other films from that era. Okay, here we go. Classic next. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I mean, I've already declared my love for Tobe Hooper. I've got a real soft spot for end of the 60s movies. And I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre is among the absolute best end of the 60s movies. It's and also it's kind of comparable to Rob Zombie as well, in that these hippies that, the movie starts with the quintessential hippie gesture, which is going on a road trip, and actually also they're reading the star signs. So there are all of these hippie tropes in the beginning of the film, and then the further they go into the wilderness, they encounter this deep American horror that they never could have conceived of. That piece in particular is comparable to Rob Zombie, especially since a lot of Zombie's characters are kind of washed up ex-hippies,
Okay, we got 28 Days Later next.
I haven't seen that film since it was first released in 2002, so I cannot form a sensible opinion on
it. We've seen it, but
I remember thinking at some point, I wish people would stop talking about it as though it's a work of genius when it's actually just an okay horror movie.
The zombies go fast.
Yeah,
that's what everybody said about it when it was first released. Like, I'll be honest, like out of all of the horror movie monsters, zombies are my least favorite. That's probably why I haven't revisited it in however many 1,000 years. But I think the next one is A Quiet Place, which everybody tells me I should watch, but I haven't seen.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
I haven't seen it.
Did we see this at the cinema?
We did, yeah.
It's good. It's not great.
It's an entertaining horror movie.
Okay, go on to The Omen.
It's good. I mean, I think it. What year was The Omen? It was 1976, and The Exorcist was what? I want to say it's 1970 something, 1973. So The Omen, it cashed in on one of the greatest films of all time, which is always going to be problematic. I mean, it's enjoyable enough. I think for a movie that's considered such a classic, it's quite forgettable. But that's my quite blasé take on The Omen. How about you guys?
Yeah, it's not something I would go back to.
It's a well-made film and it's creepy, but I think you've just seen it it's one of those as well that you've seen it steeched or sent up or whatever so many times it loses something.
Anyway, next we've got Suspiria, which we've already talked about.
Yeah,
So,
which is a movie I have religious feelings about. So
yeah. And for me, it's just a film I wish I liked it more than I do, but I can't connect with it. And The Fog, I'm surprised to see that so high. I mean, that's a pretty mediocre film. It's for me, that's way down on my list of favorite John Carpenter films.
Yeah, that's weird to be so high in this list, I think.
interested to hear that because I haven't seen it. I love John Carpenter, and I love because it is based on Stephen King, isn't it? It's based on a King story.
Is it? I don't know if it is.
Well, it was.
Not the Mist.
Yeah, based on. Am I getting them mixed up?
You getting your Mist and your Fog mixed up? I don't know. I could be wrong.
Oh, God. What am I to do? But
what is the difference between Fog and Mist?
I haven't seen The Fog though, so that's on me.
It's good. I mean, it's good. It's good, but I'm surprised to see it this high in the list. Okay, next is Get Out. That's a really good film.
I liked it. I was really late to the game when it came to Jordan Peele. I think Us is his best film. I think Us is a terrific film. Get Out. The thing that I like about Get Out is it played a smart one on the audience. The audience, when I say the audience, white liberals, of which, hi, my name's Richard, thought it was a movie about racism, and it isn't. It's a critique of white liberalism, and that is the absolute genius of the film. And it makes it all the more ridiculous and annoying that all of these white people would pat themselves on the back, like on social media, saying that they support a black director. Where no, this movie was criticizing you. And I really, really love how nuanced the film was. Us is still his best film in my opinion, which is this terrific film which takes these really complicated psychoanalytic concepts and makes them like super accessible. Tropes around the mask and the scissors, but Get Out is a lovely film.
Yeah, I think we talked about this before. I prefer Get Out to Us.
Why is that?
There were a few things about Us that just annoyed me. I think it was too predictable from the start anyway. And then the moments that are meant to shock you throughout just didn't shock. Whereas with Get Out, it keeps you guessing a bit more.
Sure. I'll take that. I think that's valid. I think I don't really watch movies like thinking about twists. So I mean, I didn't see Us and think, oh, I know what the twist is going to be at the end. But I think when the home invasion portion starts and the shadow,
that's the best bit.
Yeah, and like they're like she starts speaking by inhaling air instead of exhaling air. That's really creepy and strange, and I really really love that. But yeah, I mean, if somebody said to me Get Out was better than Us, I wouldn't complain. Like I can accept why that might be more preferable.
They're both very creepy films, obviously the horror films, but the creepiness of Get Out is it's more sinister, a bit more terrifying to me. That you know that where he is, he's not safe, but you don't quite know why. Whereas in Us, you know why what's going on is creepy.
Yeah, I think like in terms of what you're saying about Us, Get Out. This isn't a spoiler, so I think people can still watch it. But at the very very beginning of Get Out, a character that in the prologue, the character gets suddenly whacked over the head and kidnapped, and then you see the main character come along. And then the entire film plays out. And I was like, why don't they just whack the main character over the head like the first one? And like, so that was a little bit of a plot hole for me. But by the same token, I enjoyed the film,
Yeah. I mean, I've seen Get Out about 3 times, I think. I've only seen Us the once. So I'm sure I'd benefit from watching that again. So good film anyway. I wonder if Us will be on the list. Oh, Nick, well, I'm surprised by this. I thought this would be really high, but Psycho is only 17.
Yeah, so you give me your take first, and then I'll go from there.
I mean, I do think it's one of the best films ever made, but it depends how they're judging this. I don't think this is one of those weird things. Are you judging it for being a good film or for being a good horror film?
So I struggle to throw my weight behind Hitchcock as much as most film lovers do. He's one of those sort of classic directors who I just don't love as much as everybody else does, Having said that, Rear Window is a masterpiece. I love Rear Window, and I love Psycho. So I'm surprised to see it as low as it is on the list. It's a beautifully put together film. Again, like it's Hitchcock with his like adorable pop fascination in Freud. So now that we're at, what number is that? That's number 17. So everybody knows by now that I think The Exorcist is the bee's knees. Where do we think The Exorcist is going to come in?
Top 3?
It could be number 1. That's the way these. I mean, I've seen it in other lists at number 1, but then I've seen Psycho at number 1 in other horror movie lists.
I'm very much the same. It'll be in the top 10, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'll be very surprised if we don't see it in the top 16.
Yeah.
So next, An American Werewolf in London, which is, I think, deservedly in this list.
Yeah.
Surprised to see it ahead of Psycho, but there we are.
So when I was a teenager, me and a close childhood friend, who I spent a lot of time with at his house, there were 3 films that we watched over and over and over and over and over again on repeat on VHS. Blues Brothers, Aliens, it was Aliens, and American Werewolf in London. So I haven't seen this film in since I was 19, and I'm now the humble age of 37. And I watched it so many times; it is ingrained into my psyche. Like I can play the entire film back to myself, just because we watched it drinking beer and being generally snotty teenagers.
Well, it's a very. I mean, we must have seen this a lot. It's a very rewatchable film.
And there's so many things to like about it, like the randomness and things like the weird Nazi nurse scene, and
the Nazi werewolf scene that just appears
just
from
call back to earlier. Obviously, we were talking about Werewolf Women of the SS,
directed by Rob Zombie. Yeah.
I forgot about that. That's so interesting. Yeah,
the practical effects, that shot just at the time for what it was, the first transformation shot, is absolutely fantastic.
Well, the special effects guy, we were talking earlier about Toni Collette not winning the Oscar. The special effects guy won the Oscar for that film.
Oscar for a horror movie, good.
Yeah,
it's a rare thing.
Well, it's the category you're going to get one for, isn't it? But they were just absolutely beautiful.
Next is Ring. Okay,
so is this Ringu? Or is this
Ringu? This is Ringu.
It's Ringu, yeah.
Yeah, we argue about this one, don't we?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, but I have more. I like the Gore Verbinski American remake more than you do.
And I saw this first.
And I saw the remake first. Yeah, but I like the original too.
Oh no, yeah. It's the which is better, but I definitely remember watching this in my bedroom alone late at night, and it freaked me out.
So 1998, I probably would have been around 14, and so again, it was that age where this sort of movie would hit me, and I didn't watch it, and I didn't watch it until last year. And objectively, it's not a scary film. Like objectively, and I watched it last year, and I was terrified because all of those feelings I had when I was 14 repeated back on me. And that is, I mean, that's a very interesting, cool film about haunted media, because I was the one who was haunting it. You know.
Well, so you only saw this last year,
yeah.
But had you seen the American remake or no?
No.
Oh, you still haven't seen that, I'm guessing.
No.
Well, watch that. See what you think. That's there are lots of bad horror remakes. I think that's one of the few good ones.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But I did. But just to be clear, I liked Ringu, but I liked it precisely because I haunted it myself. So next, I haven't seen this. This is Zombies:
Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, it's Dawn of the Dead.
Okay, on the poster it says Zombies, but then the thing is Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, well, we've kind of talked about Dawn of the Dead with the consumerist critique.
Yeah. I mean, zombies aren't my thing necessarily, but I appreciate Romero, so that's my take.
Yeah. So, okay, next, Carrie. Fine. That seems a bit higher than I would have thought, but I like it. I like Carrie.
I shouldn't admit this as publicly, and I shouldn't admit it as somebody who's written a little bit on horror movies on his Substack, but I haven't seen Carrie.
Wow, that's yeah. We all have these gaps in our knowledge.
Yeah, but I haven't seen any of the Carries. I haven't read the novel. I haven't seen any of the adaptations. I don't know anything about Carrie besides what other people tell me. So, so that's my shameful omission there.
Well, this is a lot better than the remake. So this is the one to watch.
But next is a film we've already spoken about. It's Rosemary's Baby, which is a terrific film about, like, people think it's about Satanism, but really it's about gaslighting. And it's about domestic abuse, and it's about horrible relationships, and it's so lovely to watch the film from that perspective, because it's one of those films that not only expresses those feelings for us, but I think in turn it kind of heals us of those feelings.
It's loneliness and isolation despite being surrounded by people, isn't it? It's
yeah. And also, John Cassavetes stars as the husband, and he's if people haven't seen the movies that he directed, Love Streams and Women on the Verge of a Nervous, but not horror movies, they're dramas, but deeply great movies. But Rosemary Babies is a movie that's very, very much worth watching.
It's been a long time since we've seen it. I remember whenever I think of this film now, I think of that article I told you about this, discussing the history of horror movies, and it spoke about this film, and it genuinely included this sentence: "To this day, it remains the most controversial thing that Roman Polanski has done."
Yeah,
I can think of something else.
Yeah, but again, like we were talking earlier about auteur theory, and whether or not what an individual director has done discounts the film. Mm-hmm. And I think Rosemary's Baby is an example of a film where that is not the case, because it's a film where all of the other creative talent in the film contributing so much to it that we can still watch it and enjoy it in a sincere way. Yeah,
I have to watch that film again. It's such a good film.
Recommended. But you know what's next?
Yeah, The Wicker Man.
Oh yeah,
original.
The original, yeah.
Not Nick Cage dressed as a bear.
That's number one.
Yeah. Well, what more can we say about this? It's one of the best films ever.
It is. It's strange and erotic and dramatic, and I'm very, very interested in horror movies where an unconscious is burgeoning on polite society. And The Wicker Man is the film where that happens. And also, like, the soundtrack is just banging. Like, it's really.
Sometimes things just come together, and it doesn't quite make sense why everything has come together.
Mm.
You know, and The Wicker Man has that feel about it, that it was just everything just worked.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I'm looking at my DVD stack. I might rewatch The Wicker Man this weekend. Again, it's one of those movies that I've just seen 1,001 times, but it's due a rewatch, so I might do that.
Okay, we're into the top 10 now. What will we have? A Nightmare on Elm Street. Well, I talked about this before. This is one of my favorite films, and when I tell people it's one of my favorite films, they give me a look like I shouldn't think this is one of the best films ever. It's too, because it's too campy, it's too simplistic, but I love it. I love this film.
I like this film, but it's one of those where, for the longest time when I was a kid, I was told not to watch it because it's really scary. And then when I did finally watch it, I was like, oh, but it's not that scary. It's not that gory. It's not that frightening. But I enjoyed it still. But I'd built it up in my head to be so much more terrifying than it was. It's a
perfect idea, well executed.
Yeah, but it was just that thing I think we talked about, watching films at the right time, but because I was told I couldn't see it, and I'd already seen films that in some ways were more realistically scary, watching the sort of slightly campy comic booky horror of this was then tempered somewhat. I'm not saying I don't enjoy it, just
no, sure.
An interesting observation on people's perspectives, I suppose.
Yeah, it sounds like your experience of Nightmare on Elm Street was the same as mine with Ring. Like you haunted the movie, I mean, but Wes Craven spoke about the movie in terms of like the sins of the fathers being reenacted on the children,
Yeah.
And I think
here's another film that had a terrible remake. There was a lot.
Many terrible remakes. But I tell you what, most of the sequels are awful, but Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors was, I think, just the fourth one they did of the original sequels. That's fucking great, man.
The third one's good. Is that a third? Or
I think Dream Warriors is third, yeah.
It's third, beg your pardon. But it's the orphans and
then 5 is
seven
sorry,
is the
7
New Nightmare. I tell people watch it as a trilogy: the first one, the third one, the seventh one. Ignore everything in between.
Yeah, but New Nightmare is great as well.
That's the seventh one. Yeah,
that's the seventh one.
Yeah,
New Nightmare is like the whole meta fiction.
It's like the pre-Scream.
He's toying with the ideas that he then used with
the Scream,
which might be in this list. I mean, I love the Scream films.
I mean, what I was saying about American Werewolf in London, like Scream is one of those movies which, like, it's so a part of my life that I adore it. I would be surprised if it's in this list, if I'm honest, but I hope it is. But you know what's next?
The Exorcist. So, okay, well, this is a list that is not going to have Psycho or The Exorcist at number 1, not even in the top 5. That's surprising. Okay.
I'm wondering what's...
Well, we've talked about The Exorcist. We all love The Exorcist.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I'll add about, like, in terms of what we've already said about it is it's like a beautiful dark crystal that you can hold up to the light, and you can turn it at different points, and it will make different beautiful shapes. Like I related to The Exorcist because of the Father Karras character, he's like the younger priest in the film, and his anxieties around his dying mother and his conflicts with faith. And then I spoke to a friend about it, and she said, "Oh no, it's about Linda Blair's character. It's about the 12-year-old girl." And I was like, "Wait, so how do you relate to The Exorcist?" And she said, "It's a horror movie about female puberty." And suddenly, the entire movie kind of opened up to me. And then I listened to a podcast on it, and they highlighted the class politics of it. Like Father Karras's character is very poor. Linda Blair's character's mother's very, very rich. And so there's this whole other dimension to the film. And then it's a movie which I can revisit over and over again and get something else out of. And this is the final thing that I'll say about it. It's the movie that I watch every Halloween for the last 6 years.
That's a good ritual. Ritual is the right word.
And it is a ritual, but it's such a generous and extraordinary film that I hope people, go to it and watch it and get something out of it instead of going by the anxieties they had when they were 12. This is what a lot of people seem to speak from.
Yeah, we saw it recently, didn't we? Just by chance. Where were we? We weren't at home. We were traveling somewhere, and it was just on.
Was it in Venice?
It might have been Venice.
I think it was in Venice.
All roads lead to Venice, which has no roads.
I think it was in Venice, and we were watching it with Italian subtitles.
Okay, next is Jaws.
Yeah, so what do you guys think about Spielberg?
I like Jaws.
I love Jaws. Jaws was a film we had at home on a VHS, and I would watch all the time. Scared the hell out of me as a kid, but not as much apparently as my older brother, who still will not swim in the sea.
I related to, what's the name of that character? The one I would relate to.
Quint.
Yeah.
The drunken sailor.
The drunken sailor. I've always felt an affinity with him. That's why I want to go as well. Just
being eaten by a shark.
Yeah, but
I was trying to fight it.
That's what you're saying. I struggle with Spielberg, if I'm honest. I think the movies that people don't hold up are often his best movies. Like I think Minority Report is great. Catch Me If You Can is great. With the classic Spielberg films,
E.T. Surely everybody likes E.T.
E.T. is. I don't like E.T. for the same reasons. I know it's not a Spielberg film, but I don't like E.T. for the same reason I don't like The Goonies. It just feels like a deeply creepy film, and so I do struggle with the classic Spielberg movies. Although, in fairness, I've got some friends who are deeply invested in Jurassic Park, and my opinion on Jurassic Park was always great first half. The second half doesn't deliver. And when I told them this, they sat me down by force to watch Jurassic Park. And it is a good film on the whole. So I might need to go back and watch Jaws on the whole and E.T. on the whole, and see how I feel. But my overall memory of E.T. and Jaws is
yeah. Well, don't worry so much about E.T. But Jaws.
That
if you don't like Jaws, then fair enough. You don't like Spielberg, and you've just got some inherent hatred of Spielberg. Because Jaws is it's Spielberg's best film. It's one of the best films ever.
And that jump scare where he's diving, that for something that what rating is Jaws now? Is it a PG? Was it a 15? I don't know. But the jump scare, diving the wreck, and the dead body comes out. That's just amazing. Without being gory, it just absolutely messes with you, and it's just that's
All right.
it.
So it's 2 thumbs up for Jaws, and Richard is not convinced.
Well, I'll rewatch it at some point, and then I'll let you guys know.
Oh, Nosferatu. Okay, so they're going to bring in the classics. We love Nosferatu. Everyone loves Nosferatu.
So good, isn't it? The Mr. Eggers is remaking it.
I know, yeah, and I'm so looking forward to that.
Well, me too.
That seems like the perfect. If I could think of anyone to remake Nosferatu, that's who you want to do it. So
yeah, exactly. Like I've seen the 1922 version 1,001 times. It's the most glorious, beautiful film. Like the scene where the main character opens the door and sees Count Orlok in the background, and then he closes the door in fear. Then he opens it again, and suddenly Count Orlok is right in front of him. Like, that is so scary. And also,
so much of what's scary about it is just the cinematography, all the framing, the shadows. It's so beautifully made.
Sure.
Did you like the 70s version, the Klaus Kinski 70s version?
I don't know. I don't. I feel like it takes the heart and soul of the 1922 version and rips it out. But... Yeah,
exactly.
But if anybody else was doing a remake of Nosferatu, I would be upset. But if Robert Eggers is doing a remake of Nosferatu, then I'm interested. Like, because his first 3 films are so great, and like he does like the dark and conscious libidinal so well that he's the guy for a Nosferatu remake.
On a slight segue, have you ever seen the film Shadow of the Vampire? That's the one I'm thinking.
Yeah,
the right one.
I've definitely heard of it. I'm just going to Google it and remind myself of it, because I don't.
Well, it's a film about the making of Nosferatu, like a fantastical version of the making of it, where Max Schreck, the actor who played
Count Orlok,
is actually a vampire, and Max Schreck is played by Willem Dafoe.
Oh shit! I have not seen this, so I'm going to. I've got it in front of me.
Please watch it.
I'm going to watch it.
It's really good.
We should watch it. We should watch it again. It's been a long time.
Yeah, that's a really good film.
Yeah. The next one is one we've spoken about at length.
Evil Dead 2. Yeah, Evil Dead 2. I'm glad that's there.
Me too. It's glorious. It's absolutely glorious.
Yeah, what more to say about it? I mean, they're all good. The Army of Darkness, I'm pretty sure, won't be in this list now. There's only 5 left. But I love Army of Darkness too.
Practical effects. Gotta love imaginative practical effect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so next is Halloween. So another of that era, slasher, gory. Well, it's not that gory, really, is it?
It's not. It's more atmospheric, isn't it?
It's incredible. I don't know what else to say about it. It's a game changer for, like, it invented the slasher genre. Put it that way. It certainly wasn't the first to do the slasher tropes. I think we would have to give that trophy to Black Christmas, which is a masterpiece as well. But Halloween, for the general cinema goer, invented the slasher genre, and it's magnificent. I don't know what else to say about it. It's great.
Shame about the sequence.
Well, no, I'll tell you what. The original Halloween 2 sequel is great as well. Have you seen that?
I have. It's been a long time.
I recommend it because you can see where David Gordon Green got a lot of his ideas from for the remake trilogy, but it holds up. I hear some hate towards the Halloween 2 original, but it's pretty solid, if I'm honest.
Are we going to mention the Rob Zombie?
We've done enough about Rob Zombie. Let's get going. We're down.
I've got to say, I think, okay, they're not great, but I think they're unfairly maligned. I think Rob Zombie did an okay job. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, I saw it when it first came out at the cinema. I saw it at the cinema, in fact, and I haven't seen it since. So when I did this Rob Zombie rewatch last year, I watched every Rob Zombie film besides the Halloween remix, and I might need to rectify that. So I'll let you know when I do. But
yeah, they're not that bad. that's the nicest thing I can say.
We've got this list of the top 50 horror films.
I know. Okay.
Ones that are not that bad.
Number 4, The Thing. I'm sure Christian Buck will listen to this podcast at some point. He'll be happy. This is his favorite horror movie.
Is it his favorite? Okay. So, I mean, I can see that. I mean, if it was number 1, I wouldn't be surprised in this list. But it's deeply surreal and visceral and paranoid. It's not the John Carpenter movie that I always go to, but it's I mean, I say objectively, facetiously, but it's objectively a great film.
It is, and again, it's one we haven't seen in a long time.
But it's again, like with so many of the great horror movies, it's that isolation and paranoia, isn't it? That the fear of the dark, the fear of isolation, the being trapped.
Yeah.
And again, practical effects.
Yeah, I was going to say the effects.
So at the end, and this isn't a major spoiler, at the end, do you think the Thing is still around, or do you think it's been
spoiled? I think there's enough to suggest that it is.
Yeah. Okay. I wonder if it's a great COVID movie for that reason.
I wonder if downloads went up during the lockdowns.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it. I never thought about that until just now, but I'm going to rewatch that as a COVID movie and see how I feel. Because the COVID movie for me was always The Lighthouse, because that was the last film I saw before the pandemic.
Ditto.
Yeah, same for us. Yeah, we saw it at the cinema, and then
me too.
Like two weeks later.
Yeah, but then, but also obviously it's a film about these two guys in lockdown. So, and so it was great to see it from that perspective. But I might rewatch The Thing with those eyes and see how I feel.
Okay, Scream is 3. Cool. Wow,
Scream is in there. That's good. Okay, yeah, deeply nostalgic film. I'm surprised to see it this high, but I'm glad that is there.
Yeah, it's just one of the most important films. I mean, I've got to say, I love Wes Craven. Everything. It's not just Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream. He's done so many other amazing films and weird films. The People Under the Stairs is not one of his most famous films. It's not one of his best, but when you watch it, it's just such a weird film for him to make. And he has so many things like that.
Yeah. Well, anyone who can do the Nightmare is up there, you know?
Yeah, he's a genuinely inspired artist.
And you know, we recently passed the anniversary of his passing.
Oh yeah, how many years ago was it now?
You're going to test me now.
6 years? Probably longer than that.
No, it's longer. It's far longer than that. I think I want to say it's over 10.
Well, Scream 4
in 2015, so we're looking at
8 years. Yeah.
Yeah, bless him. Like amazing mind. Like what we were saying about elevated horror earlier, he took it. He took the genre and did it. Like people often forget, but Last House on the Left was basically a remake of Wild Strawberries, the Ingmar Bergman film, and so people don't expect a horror director to be in dialogue with Bergman, but there you go. You know?
Yeah, a drink to Wes Craven.
A drink
to a sip anyway.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Okay, we've only got 2 left. Okay. Alien. Okay, I guess
I thought this would be coming.
Obvious. Yeah, it is better than Aliens, isn't it? I think just about.
Again, been so long since I've seen either of those films, but I do remember I didn't see Alien. Aliens I saw first, and it scared the crap out of me as a kid.
Is it like what's scarier? Not really showing the monster or showing you the monster? They're scary in their own way.
Well, I guess by Aliens you had already seen the monster, so you knew the beats. But
yeah, you knew going with screen rules, you had to up the ante.
Yeah,
you've there needs to be more. But Alien, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of me and my childhood friend, like Aliens was the film, but when I got to see Alien, like I kind of like the films that have a slower burn to them, and Alien has, it's got Harry Dean Stanton in it, he's so good to watch, just as a face, he just like the way he talks and like the way he delivers those lines. An Alien, like it, in the same way Halloween invented a genre of slasher films, Alien did it invented a genre of sci-fi horror. And I think I maybe watched it 2 years ago last time, although it's a film I've seen a billion times, and it still holds up. And I appreciate that digital effects units are underpaid and they can't unionize. So when people say, "Oh, digital effects are so bad," like there's a lot of ideas there that need to be addressed. But by the same token, the effects in Alien are so good. They're so good.
Okay, are we ready?
That's it. Number one, then. What we got?
Okay. It is an obvious one. So, The Shining. But kind of a controversial one, I suppose. Best horror movie of all time? Is that how you would describe it?
It's not a film. When I think I want to watch a horror film, my mind instantly goes to The Shining.
Well, I love this film. I really love this film.
Me too. I think the problem is they put it at number one. Like if it was in 10-2, I wouldn't have complained. But they put it in number one. I think the interesting thing about Kubrick's career is he basically went through all of the genres. So he did like comedy with Dr. Strangelove. He did sci-fi with 2001. He did war with Full Metal Jacket, and he did horror with The Shining. I'm surprised to see it at number one. Like I do love the film. I think, like The Exorcist, it's a film that refracts its strange dark light in different ways depending how you look at it. The last time I saw The Shining, I thought, and this is the first time I viewed the film in this way, the entire film is maybe somehow playing out in Jack Torrance's head. And all the time that the film begun, he wanted to kill his family. And that's an interesting, way to view the film for me, alongside the colonial interpretations of the film. Like this is a hotel that's been built over hallowed indigenous ground, but to have the film at number one, I think Kubrick is too, and everybody says this, I'm almost shuddering, like thinking about saying it out loud, but Kubrick is too cold a director to have this film at number one. Like it needs somebody with the heart of Friedkin with the Exorcist, or with
or Wes Craven. Someone who's really
number one. Yeah, so I'm surprised. Like again, if it was in number two, I'd be like, yeah, but number one is it's a high ranking for this film.
Okay, so one last question then before we wrap up. We've got let's not look through all 50 again. Let's look at the top 10, which are Nightmare on Elm Street, Exorcist, Jaws, Nosferatu, Evil Dead 2, Halloween, Thing, Scream, Alien, and The Shining. And let's each pick which is the actual best but we have to pick from those 10.
Okay. You guys go first.
Clara's going to go first.
Okay.
So I need the thinking time. So we have A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mm-hmm.
We have The Exorcist. We have Jaws. We have Nosferatu. We have Evil Dead 2. We have Halloween. We have The Thing. We have Scream. We have Alien. And we have The Shining.
Okay. Nosferatu.
I thought you were going to say Jaws.
It's not a horror movie. We've talked about this.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go. I'm going to do it. I'm going to say A Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't care if people think I'm lowbrow. I've had worse said about me.
I was torn. I was torn between saying Nosferatu and Evil Dead.
I'm thinking that, like, say, best horror movie. Okay, emphasis on horror. A Nightmare on Elm Street is a horror movie.
So, for me, my first thought is The Exorcist. However, if Nosferatu was removed from that list, no other film would compete with The Exorcist, but Nosferatu is in that list. So I hate having to, offer a tie here, but no, I mean, okay, my honest answer is a tie between The Exorcist and the original Nosferatu, but
it's difficult anyway because Nosferatu is in a way of it's so removed. It's a different kind of film from the others. Well, let's just say that we're all saying Nosferatu +1, and my 1 is A Nightmare on Elm Street. Richard's 1 is Exorcist.
Evil Dead.
I think that would be a sick marathon if we did those 5 or 4. Sorry. If we did Evil Dead, Elm Street, Exorcist, and Nosferatu, that would be the greatest marathon of all time.
Well, there's another podcast like with commentary.
I think you start with Nosferatu. You don't end with Nosferatu. You start with Nosferatu.
You can't end with Nosferatu.
Agreed. I think maybe even do them chronologically.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Listen, I'm not only really, really grateful for the incredible work you guys put out on Penteract and Associated Presses, but I'm also really, really grateful for you guys having me on the podcast to talk about such exotic topics. So thank you for that, and long may your work continue.
Yeah, and yours definitely. And this has been fun. This has been really good. And I think I'm actually going to get 2 podcasts out of this. I think this is going to be too long to be 1 podcast. So thank you again, because that means I don't have to record another podcast to fill a gap.